Welcome to another episode of Crash Chords Autographs. I, of course, am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon. Before we get into this week's episode, I, of course, want to thank my patrons, Rob, Robert, Case, and MJ. If you'd like to support me, this show, and all the other things I do, you can go to patreon.com/Stormageddon. Also, I've started streaming more regularly over on twitch.tv. If you go to twitch.tv/DJ_Stormageddon, I've been streaming things like Atadyne 2, Fire Emblem Three Houses. I have a weekly Let's Play stream with Katie Bug, and we're playing Stardew Valley and Farming Badly. It's a lot of fun, so come hang out if you like that sort of thing. But now, on to this week's episode, which is, of course, with the incredible Wordburglar. I've known him for a bit of time now. I've been a fan of his work through the nerdcore scene, and I've always really wanted to have him on the show. And I'm so happy that I was able to grab him for a quick Skype chat and go over some of the reasons why I love him and his work. He's got a new album coming out soon called Spaceverse, all about, of course, space and sci-fi. You should check that out. The first single is out now. You can go to Bandcamp to find out more. Just look up Wordburglar. But for now, here's my interview with the incredible Canadian badass known as the Wordburglar. Excellent. Well, Wordburglar, thank you for joining me on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure, Stormageddon. Do you prefer Stormageddon, Stormageddon?
Stormageddon works just fine.
Okay, word.
Yeah, I've been wanting to have you on the show since I saw you. You opened Megaran and MC Lars were on tour, and they were playing in Brooklyn. This had to be over 5 years ago, maybe, or 4 years ago.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe at that. I guess I feel like it was maybe 3 or 4 years.
Or maybe 3 or 4.
If you told me it was 5, I would believe you.
I mean, I honestly, it all blurs together. But You were there with more or less, and it's the first time I had seen either of you perform. I had not been exposed to your awesome rhymes. And after that show, I was talking to Lars, who I've known for a while just from seeing him around the scene, and I was like, dude, what's up with Wordburglar? I've never heard his stuff before. He's like, Wordburglar? He's been around forever. You've definitely heard his stuff. And so, of course, I went back through my previous catalog, and I realized there was a song I had heard of yours way back when, and it was the one you did with MC Frontalot back in the day about Canada.
Oh, yeah.
Where
that's
you and
early on Final Boss, I think that's on that record.
Yep, it was you and Jesse Dangerously, and like, I went back immediately. I was like, oh, of course I know. And that's kind of the route I go listening to nerdcore. Like, I'll hear someone feature on something else. And now with Spotify, you can go down like the rabbit hole and like, all right, well, who does this guy worked with? What albums does he have? And of course, I've been binging your stuff ever since. I've become quite a big fan. So
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, dude.
And so first I want to actually start by talking about your newest full-length record, which was Rhyme Your Business, which came out back in 2018. What I love about this record is that it's very open about how nerdy you are and just about where you come from. Like between Rental Patient and Input Blitz and like even Rhyme Your Business, like it seems like the concept for that album is just, what if everything that was about Wordburglar was on a record? Was that always the goal for that record?
Yeah, you got it. That's awesome. That's that's it. I mean, basically, it's just rhyme your business. You know, it means tell it like it is, and that's just me, just being like, hey, this is me. Like, this is stuff I like. This is where I've come from. This is how I like to rap. These are the different topics I like to rhyme about. So it's all that stuff. And I mean, obviously, every record should be that in some way. But yeah, I'm glad that came through. Yeah, I'm really, really happy with how that record came together. So happy it made it to you.
I remember we talked when you were in New York recently. I was complimenting you on Input Blitz and your line about body slamming a Phantom Train just because I am an old school Final Fantasy fan. But I actually wanted to talk about Input Blitz and collaborating with Megaran, which you've done a few times. When a song like that comes to be, is it like you're tossing around ideas and you reach out to him? Is it collaborative from the beginning? Like, how does the process of the kind of song like that come together?
Yeah, every time obviously any guests I work with, it's always like I think about, well, what would be a good song to do with this person? Or we talk and, Ran and I were like, oh, we haven't done a full, just a track, the two of us together. I don't actually, that might be the first track that's just both of us together.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've done a bunch of other like posse cuts and stuff. So obviously, Ran is he's a king and he loves his video games and his video game raps. So if I knew if I was coming at him with a video game concept, I wanted to make sure that it was something that unique that he really hadn't done before. So yeah, the idea, it stemmed from exactly like you're saying, like Final Fantasy 6 or 3 as we knew it in North America back in the day, when Sabin, or I don't know if you say Sabin, how would you pronounce that?
I've heard it both ways, but I think so. A little known fact about me that I'm going to sell myself out is I only played Final Fantasy 6 or 3 in the States within the last few years. I had not played it when it first came out. And so I was in my own little bubble playing this game. So I always said Sabin because I hadn't heard it anywhere.
Hey, I always said Sabin as well. And it's, anyways, in the game, for anyone who's played it, who knows it, like, it, Sabin's was sort of that first character in an RPG where you had to input a different type of control for fighting. At least it was the first time I'd encountered it, as opposed to just like a point and click and select from a menu of how you're going to fight. Like when Sabin came up, you had to input basically like Street Fighter style key movements, right? Like, like if you were doing like a Dragon Ball in Street Fighter 2 or not Dragon Ball, like, like Ryu's Fireball or Dragon Uppercut or Tiger Uppercut, and you name it. And so I always thought that was kind of cool. It's like, that's just how you do it. And that's sort of, I thought, well, maybe this is a concept that Ran and I, it sort of applies to what we do. We just sort of figure stuff out and do things our way and kind of carve our own paths, and obviously love video games. And yeah, I pitched him the concept and he was down for it right away. And then I worked on this beat with Mr. E, who's a collaborator I work with a lot here in Canada, and he's just a monster beat maker. And it turned out way better than I could have imagined. Of course, Ran came through with just crazy rhymes. And yeah, any chance we get to collaborate is always a pleasure. And he's been on a few of my records. I've been on a couple of his, and so this was nice, just the two of us to get nerdy with. There's a lot of RPG references in there, and some good kind of deep cuts to some games and comic books and stuff. So. Yeah.
Well, and your love of gaming goes pretty deep. I mean, you have a whole rap song about the game Narc. And your high score on it, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. Well, it's a true story. I had the high score for Narc on NES in Nintendo Power back in the early 90s. And I had it for 1 month before somebody obliterated it. But I do have the noted accolade of being the first ever to get a high score for Narc in Nintendo Power. So... yeah,
what's cool about that one also is that obviously it's a true story, which is really neat, and but I have to ask now because we're both not young gentlemen. We're old enough that we remember gaming's days of yore. Have you ever played like that track live and people like see confused faces like, what's Narc? I don't understand. Like, what game is that?
Yeah, a lot of people do it. I mean, that's sort of in the song. I try and explain the game as best I can, and but you'd be surprised. A lot of people do know Narc. It was pretty notorious in arcades. It's also in the Ninja Turtles movie, if you've ever seen the first Ninja Turtles live action movie.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a kid playing that in like that really cool warehouse where like all the bad kids who are getting like trained by the Foot Clan to steal, they all get to play video games and drink like Tab and stuff. They get all the free pop and soda they want, and
exactly.
They play Narc, yeah.
I appreciate that we're of a similar age just by looking at some of the tracks on your previous records. Like the fact that you have one of your bigger singles off of Rhyme Your Business is A Rental Patient, which is all about renting video games and movies, a thing that just doesn't exist anymore. It's just a thing that you don't have to do. And I love that in the song, you kind of set the stage. Like, you're like, this is a thing we had to do back in the day. When coming up with a concept like that, is that just thinking about things from your past and like, what can I rhyme about that would be fun or a fun story to tell?
Yeah, well, I obviously loved and lament not being able to go to a video store anymore, as
Right.
much as it's super cool to put on any movie you want on your TV or computer now. But, you know, some of my best memories, especially we're recording this in the summer. I remember in the summer, like just going and killing time at a video store for hours with my friends and just picking out movies. And, you know, we just stay up late and watch movies, and renting videos was such a big part of my youth. And I actually got the idea for the song when I was babysitting my niece, who is 6 now, and I was just babysitting her, and I realized she's never going to know what it's like to go to a dirty video store and like, you know, go through all these boxes and try and guess at what might be a good movie or see films. The cool thing was you would see stuff that you would never ever see.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you could be looking at movies that were out in the 90s, but then you walk down an aisle and there's all these movies from the 60s or 70s that you're like, what are these? And maybe if the box art was crazy, you might take a risk on it and find a really cool movie, right? Like, I discovered so many gems that way, just when they were just like a cheap rental. You could get like 7 movies for $7 and you know, for on all the older films, and just rediscovering crazy movies and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it just came naturally, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a big Blockbuster kid myself. We had one near my house when I was growing up. And I remember how quickly the disappointment would set in if you rented it. Either if you got to the store and the game you've been waiting for months is still not in. Right. And then you take a chance on a game, you bring it home, you pop it in the Super Nintendo, and within 10 minutes you've died 30 times. And you're like, well, this sucks. Like,
that's
why?
It.
You know? And it's funny, too, because now like, there's no rentals really. Gamefly still kind of exists, but like I miss renting games because you got to know if a game was any good. Now, like, I've bought games on my Nintendo Switch digitally, and after like a half hour, I've been like, oh, I don't really like this, and you can't return it. Like, that's it, it's done. You own it forever, even if you've only played it for 10 minutes.
Absolutely. And that's really when word of mouth or a video game magazine was a huge deal. Like, I would read the magazines and sort of plan what I'd be renting months in advance, you know? Based on, I used to read like Electronic Gaming Monthly. Like, I loved Nintendo Power, but EGM I always felt was kind of the best video game magazine. It covered all the systems, and they kind of had the most attitude, and they'd be really honest with you if a game sucked or if it was great. And I discovered some real crazy gems just from reading EGM. And anyways, yeah, but that was kind of the closest thing you had to any kind of guide to renting a game. But then you'd still rent something, you're like, oh, this is the worst, the controls are bad, or it just sucked.
So let's talk a little bit about like how you got into rap music. I'm sure you answer this question all the time, but were you always listening to hip hop growing up? Was that a thing that you were always into since you were a kid?
Yeah, absolutely. Rap was just always around when I was a kid. I didn't even really know that it was different. I mean, my parents had a lot of cool records and played a lot of like Motown and, you know, disco, and to the Beatles, to just, I don't know, Elton John or whatever. Like, I remember the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack constantly too, like a lot of disco stuff. So I always liked stuff with beats, but rap, just as soon as I heard it, I just loved the way they were rapping. I loved the way the beats were made. And I mean, I think a lot about what my earliest rap records were. I mean, my earliest memories are like DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and like Run DMC, and then like Public Enemy. And basically, like, once I got into 1 or 2, we used to get these mixtapes. It was called Rap Tracks, and it'd basically be this amazing compilation of the top like 15 rap songs of that year. And then you would get everything from DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince to Eric B. and Rakim to like all this stuff. So I would just get all these tapes from like my friends' older brothers or like kids on the schoolyard, and yeah, just always loved it. And I was writing rhymes. I think like my first rhymes I wrote were maybe grade 5. And I remember calling myself S.J. Jazzy Jordan. Because my name's Sean Jordan and my initials are S.J. And of course I listened to DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. So
sure.
S.J. Jazzy Jordan, it just happened. So then I just I just would always just say rhymes, and just, I never really thought anything about it. And then into junior high, I'd be doing rhymes at like school talent shows and just rapping like other kids I knew at my school rapped. And so I would like just hang out with other kids and rhyme, and people would always invite me to come and rap with them. And I just kind of always did it and never really stopped. So I definitely, you know, I'm partial to the really old school stuff. But like probably like 90s rap is where my heart really lies. Like, you know, just that era of like Nas and Wu-Tang and everything, like mid to late 90s was just like anything from that era to this day. It's just like, oh, it speaks to me.
Yeah. I'm the same way when it comes to hip hop. For me, like Busta Rhymes, when I was coming up in the 90s, this human cartoon character in his music videos, and like that, like it was the MTV era, and how someone like him could make the video for Give Me Some More, and I was like, what is happening? What am I watching? And it only made me more fascinated. But I remember watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and going and like hearing him rap and be like, oh, this is pretty good. And like my friends would shake their head and be like, dude, that's because he's a rapper. Like he's not just on TV. You can listen to his stuff. And I remember diving into the Fresh Prince stuff way after the fact and like falling in love with it. Sure. And then discovering nerdcore afterwards. I was like, oh, people like me make songs about stuff that I'm into. Because like, you know, I loved a lot of rap music, but not a lot of it growing up was about the things that I was into, like card games and video games and TV and movies. One of the things that I think is really interesting about your raps specifically versus a lot of other nerdcore artists is that you don't just rap about video games and TVs and movies, although you do that, but you also rap about sports, which as a not really a sports guy, I love that I now know names of players and like hockey players specifically that I would have never known before I started listening to your raps. Was there ever a hesitance to do that, since, you know, nerddom can be kind of protective of things that aren't considered quote unquote nerdy, or did you not care? You just wanted to do songs about sports?
Yeah, no, I have never cared about anything. I mean, I was rapping before I'd ever heard what nerdcore was. Like to me, I love nerdcore. I'm so happy that nerdcore exists and that I am included when people talk about nerdcore. It's like the best feeling. I love it. And I'm absolutely nerdcore. But what I always say I'm a rapper first, and that's I've just always been a rapper, and I was always rapping about whatever I liked, whether it was sports or pizza or video games or Star Wars, and that's just to me what rappers. And I mean, you know, I mentioned like Wu-Tang Clan. Wu-Tang used to always mention comic book characters, and they'd always mention obviously all the kung fu stuff, and then it was mixed with all their life and growing up in like New York and Staten Island and everything. And I mean, you know, there's so many other artists like that, and I was exposed to a lot of underground rap as a kid, and there was like tons of other creative stuff going on. And I mean, it's certainly in the Halifax scene where I grew up, Halifax, Nova Scotia, in East Coast Canada, we had a great underground rap scene where DJs would share a lot of underground records. Like I don't know, I could go on and name stuff. Anyways, like I've just always rapped about stuff I like, which to me is true. And like I owe that to my listeners, to be honest, to rap about stuff I like. Plus it's also the kind of raps I want to hear. So if no one's ever rapped about Bill Mosienko, who had the fastest hat trick in NHL history, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to rap about that because I like that, you know, or I want to rap about some obscure G.I. Joe comic books that I loved as a kid. So anyway, so that's, to me, it's just, I'm a rapper first, and my duty as a rapper is to keep it real and rap the stuff I know and love and try and do it in the best way possible.
Yeah, totally.
And so, yeah, I never worry about, oh, is this too nerdy or not too nerdy or whatever. I mean, it's just, this is me. Like, this is just who I am. Now, I'm super nerdy about it. Rap and about sports as much as I am about video games or comic books. So it's just who I am. So that's why I think nerdcore, it's like, yeah, when I heard about nerdcore, I'm like, well, yeah, that is me. Like people were calling me nerdcore before I even fully knew what it was. So and luckily I met people in the scene and they were all awesome, and yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, one thing I love about the scene is how supportive it is and how everyone just pushes each other up. And I mean, you could talk about how, you know, you whether there's intent or not to be nerdy, because your music speaks for itself on what you're nerdy about and what you like, which is really great. Like your most recent EP, of course, being about Star Wars and, of course, Canada, where you're from. I remember we talked online quite a bit and in person when I saw you about Toronton, which I love as someone who's never even been to Canada. I want to visit. I've not been yet. But like, to me, it's just a great song about how can we make things in Canada sound like things in Star Wars? Also, I think the word Tauntaun is just a fun word to say. The idea of a Tauntaun being called the Tauntaun because he's from Toronto. How did that EP come to be? Did you just were thinking about Star Wars and wanted to throw some stuff together and also rap about your hometown?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I came up with that name Toronto, and I was like, this has to be something.
I mean, how could it not, right?
Yeah, and then, of course, the people who live in Edmonton are mad I didn't do the Edmonton, and the Saskatchewan, they're mad there's no Saskatchewan, and on, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, hey, look, I love Star Wars, and my new project I'm working on, it's a full-length album called Spaceverse, which I'm hoping it should be out by very early fall, if not end of summer.
Oh, awesome.
And yeah, so it's all sci-fi stuff. So it's a lot of different tracks. Actually, we were talking about Mega Ran. There's a remix of a track I did with Mega Ran and Cool Keith on there. There's a few Star Wars songs. There's some Transformers stuff on there. Visionaries, Star Trek, Doctor Who, and then just sort of general fun sci-fi stuff. And it's just stuff I love, and I was just kind of like, hey, you know, I could talk about Star Wars forever, and I haven't really done any Star Wars song. I guess I've done like maybe one or two in the past, but I was like, yeah, it's time. I just had a couple ideas for these Star Wars tracks, so I put them out, and people kind of dug them. And obviously, there's thousands of Star Wars songs out there, but I thought that I had a take on them that hadn't been done yet, so I was. That's why I made them.
That's awesome. That's very cool. And so what I'm curious then, with the new record being focused on sci-fi versus the previous couple of records kind of being more general, just about you and what you do you find that harder or easier to write when you're within a specific like genre or focus?
Oh, I mean, hey, I could rap about myself all day. No, that's a good question. I love having a focus, getting a theme when the concept is right, and I love it, and I always try and include concept tracks on all my records. But yeah, definitely keeping it to one focus. It's super fun, and it's like, hey, all right, this is all sci-fi. Like I'd only really done that before on Welcome to Cobra Island, which is all themed around like G.I. Joe comics and stuff. It was just like a fun project I did in 2013. And that was that really just stuck to one concept where, you're in this world. On the sci-fi album, there's a few tracks definitely where I step back, and it's sort of a heightened version of myself in a space situation. But yeah, for the most part, I'm taking on characters, and I've just sort of created a new character and interjected it into that world. So like with Tauntaun, obviously we're talking about the fictitious Tauntaun who moves to Toronto. For those of you listening who haven't picked that up yet, because you know the climate's pretty similar in Canada and Hoth. I mean, you know,
sure, yeah,
cool.
I can see it. I appreciate also at the end of that track that you like do the shout outs to those other Tauntauns, and like you have the Winniporg. Like I enjoy really cheesy wordplay, and that stuff is pretty good. With gags like that at the end of a song, do you like just think like throw out as many puns as you can, just like jot down as many as you can in a row and see how many you can come up with?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Or I just ad lib a whole bunch in the booth, and then usually if I can make like the engineer laugh at something, I'm like, all right, keep that in the song. So a lot of it is just done sort of like first take raw, like let's just do this, and I can usually tell right away from the reaction, because a lot of times they're like, I don't know what the hell you're saying. And I'm like, well, you know, this is for that one friend of mine who's gonna get this obscure reference to Who Jibs from the Marvel Star Wars comics. So I leave it in there, right? Or I'll talk about like Quintessons from Transformers or something. And you know, I just love getting out of the booth in the studio, and I record with some incredibly talented engineers. You know, shout out Fresh Kills and Timbuktu and Beat Mason and all these great people that I work with. But sometimes I'll just say rhymes, and their reactions are the best, because they're just like, it might be just way too obscure or nerdy for them, and They're like, I don't know what you're talking about, but it sounds good. It sounds real. And I'll be like, oh, well, let me explain. This is actually because when Bib Fortuna greets C-3PO in Return of the Jedi, he says, this is
Nothing makes a joke funnier than when you have to explain it to somebody.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing, is like when you get just a puzzled look and you're like, well, actually, see, this is really funny because I'm referencing this one thing. I mean, anyone who knows you and knows your work would know that you're just a wee bit obsessed with G.I. Joe, as you have done an entire record more or less all about Cobra and the G.I. Joe. Did you grow up watching a lot of those old school cartoons like G.I. Joe, Transformers, all that stuff? I imagine so, yeah?
Oh yeah, it was they fed it straight to my eyeballs. I would plug in my eyeballs into an old CRT television and just get like bombasted with G.I. Joe and Transformers for my entire youth. No, I love them. I love the cartoons, like especially those two, G.I. Joe and Transformers, the voice acting and directing. And yeah, obviously they're designed to sell toys, but the people making them were all super talented. They had incredible comic book writers writing the stories. They had crazy talented voice actors and directors directing these things. And based on what they had at the time, like the animation turned out amazing. And like they created these like epic cinematic animated adventures for kids. And you know what? I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. Love Transformers, love G.I. Joe. And then, of course, I discovered all the comics and then just spent my life collecting and reading all the comic books for these characters and learning more about them. And yeah, for fun, escapist fantasy, it's the best stuff. And then when I did Welcome to Cobra Island, I had always, I've always rapped about G.I. Joe or Transformers and Star Wars throughout all my albums, but focusing on it, it didn't start out that way. Like for Cobra Island, I just started with one song that I had an idea for, who was like, it was about this rapper who worked for Cobra. Because I was like, they've got all these other specialties. They've never had a rapper. I could be that guy. This is finally my chance to get into Cobra all these years later. So, and I also felt because I cared about this stuff so much, I'd always wanted to do something, but I didn't want to make it suck. So I felt that at that point in my career in 2013 that I had gotten good enough as a rapper that I felt comfortable that I could like tackle this stuff in a way that was going to be cool and wouldn't just seem like hacky or whack. And that I knew the producers that I was working with were like at the top of their game and the beats were going to be crazy. And then all the turntablism and cuts are just going to be amazing. And it just, as I started to write, I just couldn't stop writing. And this whole concept album just unfolded and I had to record it. And it's out there. It's for free. If anyone listening hasn't heard it, you can go on Bandcamp, just type in $0, get it. Welcome to Cobra Island. It's out there. And I think it's one of the coolest things that has happened to G.I. Joe in a while, if I do say so myself, because there hasn't been a lot of great stuff from that other than the action figures in a while. And, the comics are still coming out and they're great, but, it's fan fiction. And yeah, I always joke I could go on about G.I. Joe forever because I love it. But I wanted to do a good album and I wanted to do justice to something that I really cared about and make it dope as hell and really, kind of own it. Be like, hey, look, I wanted to raise the bar for a G.I. Joe rap album. So if anybody else wants to do one, great, go ahead. But I wanted to make sure the one I did was the best possible one that I could do in 2013. So I feel like I accomplished that. So
I would agree. Absolutely. So, and it sounds like to me, you're not a fan of the new movies or the new, like, I know they've done some stuff that's been less than great, I guess people could say, with the franchise.
Yeah, they did some cool cartoons like G.I. Joe Resolute. If anyone listening cares, that's really, really dope. And G.I. Joe Renegades was a really good cartoon attempt as well. But the movies were, I just thought, abysmal. And it's a real shame that they couldn't figure it out because there's a lot of great content that they could have done, a lot of great ways they could have done it. And but, that's what, starting to, I don't want to get into that like fan, entitlement or something, but it's something that you care about when you see somebody like do a crappy job. Like I remember when that Green Lantern movie came out, it was like, oh man, Green Lantern could be so good. I mean, you just look at the Marvel movies and see how well that they've adapted that source material, which some of it is just completely indigestible if you are not like a diehard comic book fan. And now like Thanos is a household name.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
That's one of those things where if you told me 10 years ago that we would have a movie with Thanos in it, I would have never believed you. And the fact that now at this point, Marvel could literally say they're putting Kang the Conqueror in the next movie, and I'd be like, all right, sure, why not? Like,
I hope they do.
Because there's a ubiquity to it that's kind of good, because it's just, they've made it so digestible that people who were afraid to engage with that kind of material now have a kind of Cliff Notes version that they're like, I can enjoy this thing that other people enjoy and enter into that conversation.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like bringing it back to the music, that a lot of really great rap music and hip hop that tells stories or shares stories that people aren't familiar with, they can be something that really brings you in, especially when they come from the heart. I mean, what I love about your work is that everything that you rap about that's personal to one degree or another, whether it's about a thing you like or something in your life, it doesn't feel overblown or performative. It just, to a degree there is, just from the comedy and the way you actually perform, but it doesn't feel fake. Like, all of it feels like it's coming from the heart and from a real place. It feels like you work really hard to make sure that these things come across naturally.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I do. Well, I've always had a saying with the raps I make, if it rhymes, it's real. And so I always try and live by that. If it rhymes, it's real. So I got to make it real. And that's awesome. Thank you, man. I'm honored to hear you say that. So it's really cool.
Well, I tell the truth. If you were terrible, I'd tell you, but you're not. So don't worry about it.
Hey, I'm still working on it. Still trying to get better.
Are there any subjects that you've tried to approach or things you've tried to put a song to that you just can't make work right, that you're still trying to like find a way to get out there?
Yes. I've got a whole document on my desktop computer of all these song concepts that I've just been compiling over the years. And, you mentioned Rental Patient earlier. That was a concept that had been up there for a little bit before I could crack the code on it. And I always, like I've said this, I always need a good entry point. Like, what is my perspective? What is my in to this idea, this concept? How is it going to be the most honest, and what is an approach that I can write to it from? In terms of like actual concepts, there's a million. I mean, I don't want to throw any out because I'm still working on them now. So I don't want somebody to be like, yo, that's a good idea. I want to use that. I don't want someone to burgle my words, if you say, but there's dumb stuff. Like, I had this idea for a concept called Cat Ghost Scared My Friend. And because one night I was walking in the park with a friend of mine and we saw this like shadow, and it was like a cat. I was like, what was it? It was like, it looked like a cat ghost. It's like a cat ghost scared my friend. So I always thought that could be a funny song, but then how do you make that a 3-minute song? Right. Which is a fun challenge. So if I sit down, for a day or two and just really try and hammer it out, I can probably get to Cat Ghost Scared My Friend. But
I feel like if Frontalot can do a song about the fainting goat and the fainting goat meme, you can make that ghost cat song happen someday.
Exactly, right? Like, you can make a song about anything, and that's, but it's got to be catchy and fun, and like, sure. I have inside jokes with a lot of my friends, as we all do, and that's where a lot of my ideas come from. And like, a friend of mine will remind me of some joke we used to laugh about a million years ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, and then my adult perspective on it might unlock something that helps me find a cool concept for a song in it. But yeah, I don't know.
I'm curious a little bit about your writing process. When you're putting lyrics together, do you wait till you have a beat to rap over, or do you sometimes put the lyrics together before you even know what the beat sounds like?
I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
If I'll write to old beats, or sometimes I'll write, if I don't have any new beats, I'll listen to like some of my favorite like rap beats from the 90s, and I'll just start writing to that. And then other times a producer might just send me a batch of new beats, and I'm not even thinking about a song, and then I go through their beats and I hear one beat and I'm like, oh man, that beat would be perfect it sounds like Cat Ghost scared my friend. So then maybe I'll like open up Cat Ghost scared my friend and start writing to that beat. So I don't really have one specific way. I've kind of learned over the years to just write a million different ways. That's yeah, a dope beat will totally spark my imagination, but other times I'll write to a completely different beat and just be waiting for the right beat. I also dig a lot for samples. I'm always looking for new things, and like I'll hear a new sample and be like, oh, this makes me think of that. And so I really try and have no handcuffs and just come at it from every possible direction. And that usually adds for a nice little cornucopia of magic.
That's amazing. I feel like I'm always jealous of artists or creators who are like, I have this one process. It's how I do everything, and that's, I just do it every time. I'm like, how do you do that? Like, I don't understand how to approach I never approach the same project twice. I've just always got to find the way that it works best or what's most efficient, and sometimes that's a completely different angle. Mm-hmm. So you said that you may have this new record out this fall. Any plans for some singles to drop before the new record comes?
Well, I'm hoping I can announce it officially very soon. Like, I'm not sure exactly when this is airing, but I'm hoping by like mid to late August, I'll be able to announce it. And usually what I like to do, if all goes as planned, I can release a single with like the Bandcamp advance. Uh-huh. So I like to work with Bandcamp and put up like, if you put up a full album there and then you don't release the album for a couple weeks, but you can release like one single just to sort of get the word out for people and like whet their appetite. Because now, we are bombarded with so many different things. Sometimes people, bump into people and they're like, hey, you haven't put out an album in like 3 years. I'm like, no, I've actually put out 3 albums in the last 2 years. Like, where have you been? So it takes such a while for people to catch on to stuff. And I'm still really pushing Rhyme Your Business. Like, I'm so proud of that record, and I'm going to keep promoting it. I've been touring it for the last year, and I'm going to keep pushing Rhyme Your Business. Spaceverse is just a fun sci-fi hold over, I guess, until the next full length record as well. And I mean, it's a full album on its own, and I'm really proud of it. But yeah, there will be. I haven't decided what's going to be the official single, but there will be at least one song released in advance of the full album.
Awesome. Yeah, this will probably drop in early August, so it may be fortuitous. And once you announce the album, of course, put links to it and stuff to make sure that I share everything. One last thing I wanted to ask before we wrap up, which is kind of a cheesy question, but I'm always curious how other people approach giving advice and supporting others in the arts. Like, if you had to give advice, and I know it's an age-old question, if you had to give advice to someone who's trying to get into music or trying to pursue it, especially in a modern age where it's a little different than it was when we were growing up, what would be your best recommendation or advice to them? Something that maybe you didn't know when you were starting out that might make it easier for them.
Do it. Just do it. Just do it. Put out some stuff. I mean, obviously, when I was first putting out songs in junior high, I wasn't putting stuff online, so I'm kind of glad some of that stuff's not up there now. Right. But at the very least, at least record stuff and share it with your friends. Because my earliest songs, I would just record and share with my friends, and then they started sharing it with their friends, and next thing I knew, I had new friends who had heard me from my friends. So it was like that was very honestly how a lot of stuff happened for me. So I would just say, just do it and record something, write something, play it for friends, and play it for a bunch of people, get a bunch of different opinions, because a lot of people are just going to be very encouraging once they hear you do something. And then be open to criticism, be open to new ways, and do it and assume you know nothing, and be open to learning. Yes. Because you never know what you're going to learn from. You could learn from, if you're making rap, you might learn something from a country singer. You might learn something from, a construction worker. Like, every part of life you can learn something from. And, but yeah, the main thing, just do it. Put it out. You want to do something? Life's too short. Just put it out there. Do it.
Awesome. Wordburglar, thank you for taking the time to chat with me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yo, Stormageddon, it's been a total pleasure. Thank you for taking time to have me on here. It's a real pleasure. It's great meeting you in New York, and happy to reconnect here. So this has been real dope. Thank you.
The last thing I'll ask you to do is we have a saying on the show, which is born out of, if you're making good art, your life will be pretty great. And the saying is, music is life and life is good. So if you would just sign us off for the episode by saying that wonderful phrase.
You don't even have to ask if I would, because if you're making, what is it? If you're making art and you're making, I got it wrong. If you're making
music
art,
is life. If music is life and life is good.
Music is life and life is good. I'm sorry I had to ask you twice if I would, but I would always say that. You don't have to ask if I should, because Stormageddon, this has been an absolute pleasure. You are the most good.
Well, thank you. This was a blast. Thank you, Wordburglar.
Okay, peace, dude.
That's it for this episode of Crash Chords Autographs. Our theme music is by Michael Kill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review us on iTunes and Facebook. You'll help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email matt.storm@crashchords.com or hit us up on Twitter @CrashChordsWeb. Thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Victor Devon, and I am the host of We Burlesque, the podcast. Every Monday, I talk to fabulous denizens of nightlife, including burlesque performers, both seasoned and new to the form, drag performers, performance artists, DJs, and artists who make up their respective scenes. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Please visit weburlesque.com to check out episode recaps and see all the formats available. And remember that music is life. Life is good.